Hey there! Just before we get into the topic, let me say a couple words about me and our company. So, my name is Maria. I'm a content manager at Stiltsoft. Stiltsoft is still a quite young company, but we have already become an Atlassian Platinum Marketplace partner and Silver Solution partner. More than 11,000 customers from all over the world choose to work with apps from Stiltsoft. We develop apps for Jira, Confluence, and Bitbucket. All of them are available in server, data center, or cloud versions. Sometimes when you work with native Confluence features, you might feel like it doesn't cover all of your needs, especially if you work with complicated tasks. In that case, we can advise to use different apps. And one of the apps we're going to talk about today is our table filtering charts for Confluence app. So now let's get to the topic. We want to show you all the capabilities of Confluence tables and share some handy tools that can help you get the job done and that we use ourselves too. We know that many companies keep using Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets for the purpose of creating tables, even if they use Confluence for other collaborative purposes. So we wanted to compare Confluence tables, Microsoft Excel, and Google Sheets on several parameters, such as sharing information, processing it, and working together on the same table. So in case you have Microsoft 365 subscription or use SharePoint, sharing information with your coworkers won't be a problem at all. Otherwise, if you just use Excel, you have to save the file, send it to your colleague, wait until your colleague completes his job and sends the file back. So it's quite time consuming. If you use Google Sheets, sharing information and working together is not a problem. You can just send the link to your coworker and you can work together on the same table. It's easy as well. And in Confluence, you can share the information with your team as well very easily. Your colleagues will know where to find all the tables. They don't need any links, any files. They can just open your space or a space of your project and add the information they have to the table or create their own tables. You can limit the access to data to certain people, or you can just ban everyone. But generally, anyone who can enter the space can also view the page. Again, with Confluence, you can work on the same page simultaneously, and all of your colleagues can add the information, and it will all be saved thanks to collaborative editing. Another parameter that might be important in case you work with tables is the ability to see page history. Sometimes you just need to go back to the data you added before to correct some mistakes. And if you work with Excel, it's just not possible. Once you save the table and you're done with working on it, you can't go back to the previous version. With Google Sheets, it's definitely a lot easier. You can see the file history here. You can see all the versions and all the changes that were made to the document, but it's usually time consuming and energy consuming, so it's not always the most convenient choice, especially when you work with bigger tables that take a lot of time to load. In Confluence, it's very easy to find page history. First of all, in the view mode, you can access all of the versions of the page that you are looking at. And you can also restore them, especially if you remember when the page was created or when the changes were made to it. There is also another option. You need to go to the edit mode in that case and view the detailed changes. Here you can see where in particular the data changed and if there are any changes at all. Now, let's talk about creating tables in Confluence. So the simplest and the most obvious way is to create a table manually. For that, you need to click the icon on the top control panel and you'll get a 3-column, 3-row table. If you need to add more rows or columns, you hover over the table and click the plus button that appears. You can add as many rows and columns as you need, and you can also delete them by clicking on the outline and selecting to remove the row. Especially if you previously didn't store your tables in Confluence, you might want to output them from CSV or JSON files. In that case, you will need the Table Filter and Charts app. So first you attach your file with the table to the Confluence page. Then you go to the Edit mode. And you add the table from CSV or a table from JSON macro. Here you need to choose whether you want to upload your page from a specific URL or from the attachment that you already have on the page. In our case, it's the attachment. Next, you specify the name of the attachment. Make sure to check if it's correct. Next, you can specify the delimiter if you want to. After that, you insert the macro, and you can already see the table that you had in your file. The only thing that's left is to publish the page. If you work with Jira, you can output the issues to your Confluence page in the form of the table. For that, your Jira and your Confluence must be linked. If they are already linked, just go to the Edit mode and add the Jira macro. Here you need to choose which Jira you are going to be using, and you need to specify your project or your issue. For that, you can type a query or just insert the link from Jira. You can also set some display options. For example, if you want to show all the issues or just a few of them, which columns you want to include. I'm going to include all the issues. Insert the macro. And yeah, this is the table that you are going to have. Let's publish it. And this is how it looks on the Confluence page. If you deal with similarly organized tables, for example, different product requirements, you can build a table based on them as well. For that, you need to put each of these tables into the page properties macro. After that, you create a separate page, go to the Edit mode, and add the page properties report macro. Here you will need to specify the space where these pages are located and the label that's attached to them. You can see the preview of the table that you'll have. You can also choose other settings, for example, sort the table by a specific column or choose a reverse order of sorting. Then you save the page and you get the table with all of your requirements all in one place. If you have various tasks set in Confluence, you can build the table with these tasks as well. For that, you'll need the task report macro. Add it in the edit mode and choose the space or page where you want to derive the tasks from. You can specify who these tasks should be assigned to, what labels they have, who they were created by, and generally set up the table as much as you need. After you created the table and filled it with data, you might want to customize it. The first and the simplest thing you can do is to choose the header. It can be a row or a column or both if you need to. If you have a large list in your table, you can add the numbered column to help you navigate through the table easier. If you want to see more settings, you can click the down arrow that appears if you select a certain cell. And here you will see even more options. Here you can switch the cell background. You can also insert or remove columns or rows. You can merge cells, but for that you need to select the two cells that you want to merge together. And you can also split the cells, but that option is only available for the cells that were previously merged. Next thing you can add to your table is statuses. There are two ways you can do this. First, you can type status in the cell, add the macro, then set some kind of an inscription, and choose its color. The other option is basically the same, but you can choose the macro from the toolbar at the top of the page. If you want to customize your table even more, you can add emoticons. All of the emoticons are located under the smiley button at the top toolbar as well. And here you can find the faces, symbols, the animals, generally anything that you need. These can make your table look even more interesting, fascinating, and engaging. After you save the page, you can also sort your table right in the view mode. The automatic order is from A to Z or vice versa. Now, if you want to proceed and keep working with tabular data even further, you will need the third-party tools and apps. As I promised, we'll show you how to work with the Table Filtering Charts app. With its help, you can build dashboards, filter the table, perform simple calculations, and do even more. So let's get started with it. To add the table filter macro, you need to click the button at the top of the page, and you'll see three macros to apply: the table filter macro, chart from table, and pivot table. Let's start with filtering the table. You can add the filter right in the view mode, just enable it. After you add the table filter macro, you can hover over the table and you will see a funnel icon appear next to each of the headings of each column. If you click this icon, the most relevant filter will be applied to the column, and the only thing that's left for you to do is to choose the options that you need. After you apply the filters, there are several options for you as well. You can first of all save the changes. Next, you can hide certain columns. For example, I wanted to hide the budget. Next, you can reset all filters, just remove all of it and the table will look like it used before. You can remove the macro completely if you are done with filtering, or you can export the sorted table into the PDF, CSV, or Word file. If you want to aggregate your data in a certain way, you can use the pivot table macro. You can find it by clicking on the same icon at the top control panel. and selecting the pivot table macro. Then you need to select the table, especially if you have several of them on the page. And after you add the macro, you'll see a basic pivot table, but you can easily change it, adding the corresponding rows and columns and choosing what and how to calculate. For example, I want to see what the budget is for each of the campaign types. For example, how much we spend on the social media campaigns. So I leave the campaign time for the row labels, but I choose budget for the calculated column, and I choose the sum as the operation type. And here I can see the sum of the budget. So if you keep track of tasks and activities, sometimes you might want to compare the actual situation to your estimates or see the general workflow of a project visualized, or sometimes you need to make a presentation. And in that case, you might want to create different charts to make it more engaging and attractive. And there are several ways you can do this in Confluence. First of all, if you work with Jira, you can build a Jira chart. For that, you will need to go to the Edit mode and add the Jira chart macro. Here you need to specify the project you're going to be using. And here you can choose one of the three types of chart, the pie chart, the created versus resolved chart, or the two-dimensional chart, which generally resembles the pivot tables that I already showed you. After you choose the type of chart and insert the macro, you can publish the page. Unfortunately, after you save the page with the chart, you cannot change it on the fly. You have to go to the edit mode again and choose the settings, and the Jira chart macro only limits you to three kinds of charts. If you want to have more functionality and want to build more complicated types of charts, we suggest you to use the table filtering charts for Confluence app again. Let me show you a couple things you can do with its help. So first, let me show you one of the charts that you're probably already familiar with. That's a Gantt chart. You can easily build it with the help of the Table Filtering Charts app. To build the Gantt chart, you need a table with tasks and start and due dates. It would be perfect to use the Jira issues because they already contain the data. You can also add the chart from table macro over some other macros. For example, you can build a chart based on the pivot table, or you can first filter the table and then add the chart macro. So let me show you how it works. You go to the edit mode and you add the table toolbox macro. So here I've already added two macros, table filter and chart from table. After you save the macro and the page, you can keep on changing your chart and your table. For example, here in the Gantt chart, only two sprints are reflected, number 15 and number 16. But I might want to add something else, so I go to the table filter macro and I filter the table with sprints to 14, 15, and 16, and the chart changes correspondingly. If you change the filter again, it will adjust as well. You can change the size of your chart to fit your page perfectly. You can also set dependencies if you want to specify that some tasks should be completed before the others. You just drag it, drop it into the corresponding tasks, and you're done. Another comparison you might be interested in is plan time versus spend time. For that, we will be using several macros again. So go to the Edit mode and add the Table Toolbox macro. As a table, we're going to be using the Jira Issues table. In the Table Toolbox, we nested the table filter, the pivot table, and the chart from table macros, one over the other. As for the table filter macro, we only wanted to see the completed tasks. So we added the drop-down filter to the status column and then selected the tasks with the status done. Next, we added the pivot table macro. Here, we calculated the sum of original estimated and actual spent time for each type of tasks. And then, when we wrapped it up into the chart from table macro, we chose the bar chart type, we specified the labels in the values column, and we could see the chart here. After you save the page, you'll see the chart in its full size, but you can definitely adjust it to the page more by choosing the suitable height and width. You are definitely not limited to only one chart based on a specific table. Instead, you can build a whole dashboard based on the same table with tasks. For that, we will use the table excerpt and the table excerpt include macros. Let's see how it works. Go to the Edit mode. Here you can see the following. First of all, I separated the page into two sections. Each of the sections is meant to have a certain chart. Then if you scroll below, you'll see the table with Jira issues wrapped into the table excerpt macro. To use the table excerpt macro, you need to specify the name for the excerpt. That will be needed to further depict specific data when you will be adding the table excerpt include macro. Next, you can see that I added the table excerpt include with the same Jira issues table to each of the sections on the page. I wrapped them up into the table toolbox macro individually. After that, I added the necessary macros, I saved the page, and here I got a dashboard with a table and two charts based on it. You are not limited to two charts only, you can add as many as you want and customize your space just the way you need. So, this is it. I hope that our tips will help you master Confluence and inspire you to use some new tools in your daily work. Thank you for watching the webinar. I'll see you just in a moment for the live Q&A session.